What's going on, everyone? My name is Burke, bringing you the Week 3 Power Rankings for Season 1 of PICA. Now, this week it's going to be a little bit different. Unfortunately, it's just going to be me this week. Xavier and I, we couldn't get our time schedules to line up. Every time he's free, I'm busy, and vice versa. So, it's just going to be me this week. So, this video is going to be probably quite a bit shorter, just because there's not going to be much talking back and forth between me and myself. So, this week, a lot of changing is still happening. I know, at least on my list, a lot of changes happened between this week and last week, just because there's a new team, all right, who took over for the Texas Rhyhorns. So, unfortunately, they inherited the record of the Texas Rhyhorns. So they started out with 0-2. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but a lot of teams that, you think, at least I thought that were going to win this week, lost. A lot of teams that thought they were lost, won this week. So, very interesting week to say the least. But anyway, I'm going to get in my number 12. At number 12, I still have the DMR Shadow Absols. There's really not much to say at this point that I haven't said in past weeks, the past 2 weeks. They played the Middle Earth Magmortar, and it was a 3-0 loss for them. They are currently 0-3. I still don't see their team is falling short because of it's offensive, but it's not extremely offensive. Like their hardest hitter is like Mega Absol, which at base 150 still hits very hard, but it doesn't have the speed and power required to really be a very good hyper-offensive team. It lacks a lot of really good priority besides Mega Absol and Bisharp with Sucker Punch, and if you have a Dark Resist, you can deal with it pretty well. I guess like Donphan gets Ice Shard. But it's hard for this past week. He didn't really have much to deal with the really hyper-offensive team. The Middle Earth Magmortars have an extremely hyper-offensive team, and they got really big hitters like Kieran Black. They brought Kieran Black this week. Tornadus Therian hits pretty hard. Crocodile hits hard. He's got a lot of offense, and the Shadow Absols, they're still winless. I know it's only the third week, but at this point, it's starting to get hard for them to bounce back. So I think for right now, they're going to be number 12. I definitely think they have to do some stuff in free agency, drop maybe one of their dark types, maybe the Mega Absol, maybe the Bisharp. Personally, I could see them dropping the Mega Absol. I know they are the DMR Shadow Absols, but Bisharp is just better in my opinion, and picking up a different Mega, something that could help them better, such as there's some pretty good OUB Megas still out there. Mega Beedrill would be very good on a hyper offensive team. Not really Mega Houndoom, maybe Mega Sharpedo. Mega Sharpedo works very well because in this format, you don't have to Mega Evolve first turn. You can get the speed boost, so Mega Sharpedo actually has viability. And there's also still Mega Sceptile out there. So I think he definitely needs to do some stuff in free agency, drop maybe his more redundant Pokemon, pick up some other stuff, and hopefully in the future he'll be able to start picking up some wins. I don't want to see anyone go 0-11. I think there are 11 weeks. I don't want to see anyone winless, and I also don't want to see anyone undefeated. But if it happens, it happens. So he's still at number 12, just because his team's not, in my opinion, it's not great, and it also, his record, it just hit. I don't see. I see good planning. I don't see excellent planning. And his playing also is kind of shaky. And so because of that, he's still 0-3. But anyway, that's enough talking about the DMR Shadow Absols. You can see, this isn't going to take too long because me talking about it, I'm very to the point. So, the next team, At number 11, I have the Manhattan Manectrics. I do like the Manhattan Manectrics team, so I'm going to talk about the team a little bit. This was the team that took over for the Texas Rhyhorns. They were able to just put together a different team from the leftovers, including what the Texas Rhyhorns had, and he's got a pretty good team. You know, it's not... It's got a lot of good parts, some things I'm a little meh on, but overall, it's still... Because a lot of leftovers were a lot of bulk, he still has the same problem of... He's got a lot of bulk, not too much offense. He does have some more offensive things. Biggest thing is he dropped the chance and he picked the Garchomp, which is much better offensively, obviously. He's still, like, I think the only other things that changed, he picked up the Melodic, and the Hitmontop no longer has the Hitmonlee and the Druddigon. And I think that's pretty much like the only changes that the team made, but I think it makes the team better. But unfortunately, he's picking up the 0-2 record from the Texas Rhyhorns. So he went into this week 0-2, and then he gets a 4-0 loss to the Washington Red Shells. I think the thing with the Manhattan Manectrics is it's a new team. It's not the best. Again, it's not the best team, and I think they need time to get used to it. But because they're already at week 3, they don't have much time to really get used to it, and then work out the kinks in planning and executing during match. So we'll see in the future. I do have him at number 11 just because he picked up the bad record and he took home a pretty big loss. And it's not because I think he's like a bad battler. This week I helped him plan his team, so I think the planning went well because, you know, he had the tools required to take apart the Washington Red Shells team, but the playing itself, he couldn't take down the Blissey. The Gliscor was hard to take down. The Mega Aggron became a problem, and the Garchomp did put in some work, but it was very hard for him to actually take apart the defense of the Washington Red Shells, and I see that as a problem every week just because of how bulky his team is and not terribly offensive. So when he brings offense, he's going to probably bring the Jolteon and the Tornadus like all the time for his offense, and so he doesn't have the versatility with that, and the Garchomp. Like, those are his most offensive things. And when that's your offense, that's not much versatility to work with. Granted, each of them are fair, except for the Jolteon. Garchomp and Tornadus are fairly versatile in the movesets they can bring, if they're offense or physical or special. So he does have a little bit room to work with, and he's got some supplementary offense in Kecleon. But and don't get me wrong, I love Kecleon, but it's not a very big offensive pressure with only base 90 attack. Sylveon can definitely hit hard if it's choice Specs, and Arcanine can definitely hit hard if it's choice Banded. But I see those being put in more defensive roles week to week, just because Sylveon is his only cleric, only thing that can use Heal Bell. I see that being put in a defensive role, although Arcanine I can see being put more offensively. It's just going to be hard for him. It's not going to be hard for him to put together a good defensive core. It's going to be hard for him to put a lot of offensive pressure on the opposing team. And he definitely saw it this week because the Washington Red Shells have a very, very good defensive core and becomes very hard to pick apart. So moving on to number 10, my number 10, I have the Chelsea Shandies at number 10. They are currently 1-2. They took home a 3-0 loss to the Toronto Tyrantrums this week. And now the Toronto Tyrantrums is a very good team. They play very well. I don't think their draft, to me, was still a little bit shaky. He could definitely patch things up in free agency. I think he's got like leftover points that he can use. He's got 40 leftover points. So there's stuff he can do in free agency, definitely, which he could, I think, make his team a little bit scarier. And the Chelsea Shandies they just have an amazing team. But it's still, at week 3, he did get 1 win, but it still seems like he's trying to figure out how to use the team. The Charizard got a kill this week, the Keldeo got a kill this week, the Tyrantrum got a kill this week, but he couldn't, it was hard for him to break through, again, the defense in Umbreon, Ferrothorn, and Blastoise. I mean, that's pretty good defense, as well as he's got the Landorus, Therian, he brought the Reuniclus, and the Heracross. He pretty much split the kills evenly across all his Pokemon. Umbreon actually getting 2 kills. When Walls are getting the most kills, even though it's just 1 more kill than everything else, you didn't have too much. The opposing team doesn't really have too much for it, and it's allowed to get kills. So Chelsea Shandies, they're planning this week again. To me, it's just like, I think they're also not quite used to the counter teaming as well. So it takes time to get, I don't want to say like get good at counter teaming. It takes time to get used to the format, and it looks like he's still trying to get used to the format. And if he can use his team effectively, his team is very, very scary. But at this point, I still see him just kind of struggling with putting together a good counter team and then using it effectively in battle. So that's why I'm at my number 10. I want to see him do well because I love the team, and I think he can do well. But anyway, moving on to my number 9, I have Ty and the Atlanta Braviary at number 9. He took home a 2-0 loss this week against the Iowa Focus Energy. Ty's team this week, I think he's planning well. The problem comes, I think he knows how to plan. I saw it this week, I saw the planning, but when it comes to his playing is definitely, it wasn't good this week, and I thought this battle should have definitely been at least a 3 or 4-0 in the Iowa Focus Energy's favor. He was playing really poorly around I think it was the Mew, right at the end. He wasn't playing very well at the end, and it cost him 2 more of his Mons than I thought it should have. Now, it's still a 2-0 win, and I think he was just kind of being safe with it. It might have been the Tyranitar and the Mew, but yeah, I thought he should have probably gotten a bigger win, but that's that. But the Atlanta Braviary, it's just, their planning, I think, it's good. It's very good. He's got a very versatile team, so he's afforded that luxury of being very versatile in planning. He's got a lot of things he can use, a lot of pieces he can use, but just like teams that have a lot of, like the teams before it had a lot of bulk to it, he doesn't have, the problem with those teams, they don't have a lot of offensive pressure, and I think, like this week, he brought things that doesn't have huge offensive pressure. The Mega Scizor does have pretty good. The Tyranitar does as well. But the problem with his team is his big offensive pressures, the really big ones, the Mega Scizor and Tyranitar, they're slow. And now, I love Scizor because, choice, but I normally use like Choice Band and Bullet Punch. It has really good priority. So the Mega Scizor, it doesn't need the speed, but Tyranitar is kind of limited because you can run it Choice Scarf, and I think he ran it Choice Scarf this week. And then it can definitely do really good stuff offensively. But even Choice Scarf, it's only base 61 speed, so it's not outspeeding a lot of really fast things, especially a lot of fast things on the Iowa Focus Energy team. They have a lot of really fast Mons. And it's going to be hard, or at least it's going to be hard for the Tyranitar to outspeed things. So if he keeps planning as well as he does, and I guess he makes a lot of safe plays, and safe plays are fine, but they become very predictable. And I think he was playing very predictably in the beginning, and what happened was things started going down very quickly, and then towards the end it was like 4-2 or 5-2, and then the Iowa Focus Energy started playing a little sloppy at the end. And it was only a 2-0 in the Iowa Focus Energy's favor, but if he wants to do well, he's going to have to patch up. He's going to have to start making more middle ground plays things that are going to keep him with the offensive pressure that he needs, plus not make it not like overly risky plays, because if you're making unnecessary risky plays, probably going to bite you in the ass, and very, very, very few times is actually going to work out for you. But unfortunately, he takes home the loss. He's not in a bad place right now. 1-2, of course you'd rather be like 3-0, but 1-2 is not bad. There's still 8 more weeks, so if he can pick up his game and battling and keep the planning as good as it has been, I can see him doing well, and that's why he's number 9. Because I saw when I think it was week 2 or week 1 he won. Week 1 he won. I saw it was really good planning and it was good playing as well. So if I start seeing that again, he's going to move up, and I can see him being a big threat. But if this week, to me, it was just a weak showing in terms of how he was playing. But anyway, moving on to number 8, I have the Middle-earth Magmortars. The reason I have them at 8, they are 2-1, so they have won the past. They won week 1, I want to say. They did win week 1, and then they won this week, so they're 2-1. He did win this week, but it was a win. It was a 3-0 win against the DMR Shadow Absols, who haven't been doing that well. And now the Middle-earth Magmortars have been planning very well, and they've been playing surprisingly well for a team that gets to me, it looks like they could just get pretty destroyed by hazards. And he's got things like Huron Black that really do not like hazards, and he's still able to use it effectively. He pretty much split the kills evenly between all of his mons, and I think he can do well. I definitely think he can do well, especially if he drops something in free agency and picks up a spinner or defogger. That will help his team out immensely. It'll make sure that he can use the things that are weak to rocks, like the Huron Black, more effectively, because you'll be able to switch it in more times because you can get rid of the hazards. But in future weeks, if he doesn't do that in future weeks, I see it being a problem where people are going to start every week bringing stealth rocks and possibly another hazard, either spikes or toxic spikes. And if they do, it's going to be hard for the Magmortars to deal with that currently. So they're number 8 just because I don't know how well their team's going to hold up in future weeks. They did win against the DMR Shadow Absols, but the DMR Shadow Absols I have at number 12, and I've had it number 12 for the past 2 weeks. And I don't see them doing as well, and I see the Middle-earth Magmortar being the better team anyway. So when they win, when they win against the Shadow Absols, I'm like, yeah, that's what I kind of expected. So I'm not really moving. I don't think I really moved him. I moved him up 1 spot from last week. It's not really much of a change, but if he continues to win, obviously he's going to move up. Like that's why I say for every team, if you win, you're probably going to start moving up. And this is again another team I really want to see do well. I like the team. I want to see him participate in free agency and patch up the team that is hazards, because his team to me just always screams hazards, and that's why I can't move him up right now, because I don't see him doing well in future weeks. Right now. It sounds really harsh, but it's the way I see it, and a lot of teams have access to plenty of hazards. So I think that's going to be very difficult for him to deal with. But anyway, moving on, at number 7, we have the Vespiquen Park Rangers. So they moved down quite a bit from number 4 to number 7. They're out of my top 6. They lost this week. They're currently 1-2. He hasn't been playing as well, and the planning this week, to me, again, it seemed really shaky. Mega Pidgeot was able to tear a hole through his team. It got 3 kills this week. he didn't really have much for the Mega Pidgeot. And the Sequim Malamars played, I think, very excellently, and their team, despite being one of my least favorite teams out there, he's using it very well. And the Vespertine Park Rangers, their team is, I think, very good, and he hasn't been using it well. He's not been able to get the offensive momentum he needs. He's not really using Sandrush Excadrill at all. I think he used it week 1. But he's not really using Sandrush Excadrill, which I think is one of the biggest offensive threats on his team, as well as Manaphy, but Manaphy also is not really doing too much. The Mega Aerodactyl also, it seems like he's got the good team. It doesn't look like he's using it effectively, especially in battle. He's not playing as well as I think he should be playing, and he's not planning as well as I think he should be planning. With that said, he's still at number 7 because it's like it's on the cusp of possibly being in the top 6. I think he can definitely bounce back from this because he is only 1-2, and you can definitely win in future weeks and make a big comeback. But I'm shaky because he's been very inconsistent. So he's going to be at my number 7. If he wins next week, I might move him up. I might keep him at the same until I actually see him planning better and playing better week to week. But at this point, week 2 he planned well, and then he played well, except a little bit towards the end. Week 1 he didn't plan or play well, and this week it looked like week 1 almost. He lost against one of the teams I thought was not going to be doing well this season, and kudos to them. They're playing much better than I thought they were going to, and they're planning much better than I thought they were going to. Using a team that I didn't personally very like. But, I'm always capable of being proven wrong, and in terms of Vespertine Park Rangers right now, I thought they were going to be a lot more dominant than they are right now, and so I can only keep them at 7 just because the record is not there, and I just see consistency right now being a big problem for him. So, moving on to number 6, I have the Sequim Malamars. They jumped up pretty big from I think I had them number 10 last week. I'm just extremely impressed by the Sequim Malamar. They're 2-1. That's a good, it's a winning record. They're planning much better than I thought they were going to. He's using his this week he used Mega Pidgeot very well. He's using his offensive threats very well, and he's been doing some crazy things. Like week 1 he ran Trick Room. It didn't work out for him, but he's using the team that he's got, and he's using it effectively. I think there are ways to patch up his team in free agency. I can see I know he wants to drop Smeargle, which if he drops Smeargle and picks up something better, it's like picks up something better, which is pretty much anything, because Smeargle, I don't know why he picked up Smeargle. Smeargle's terrible, especially in this format. It's not even good in regular because Taunt just shuts it down entirely, and in this format, Taunt shuts it down even harder because you know what your opponent's bringing, and if he has a Smeargle, you're going to run a Taunt user that's faster than it, and Smeargle's pretty damn slow. So I can see him dropping the Smeargle and picking up possibly something in a lower tier. Something you use a lot that he can use in there. If he picks up some more, I think if he picks up a little bit more good defense, that might work for him. Dropping like Smeargle for like P2. P2 is always great. I just have to watch out for knockoff. How hard is it to watch out for knockoff? But then he's got 2 Eviolite users, and that's not great. But where I'm going at is he just needs to drop that Smeargle, and I think once he drops that, picks up something a little bit more, it doesn't matter if it's defensive or offense or utility, it's going to be better. And once he does that, his team's going to be much scarier to deal with Because really, you look at that team and you look at the first slot and you're like, I don't even have to plan for that. Well, here's my planning. Done. But so that's why I had him really low in the beginning, because I just looked at his team and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look too bad to plan for. But he definitely proved me wrong. He's only at number. I say only. He's at number 6. He's in my top 6. He is only at number 6 in the top 6 because I'm still a little worried about the consistency, although I'm not that worried. But I think the teams that are ahead of him have been playing a little bit better, and I think they just have more. I think they have better teams. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I just look at your team and to me, I don't like it. I guess it's because a team I probably wouldn't want to use myself, but these are always going to be biased. But I think the teams that are ahead of him have been playing just a little bit better, planning just a little bit better, and using I see their teams as more versatile and just able to really deal with other teams better than his team. That's not a knock on him, because he is playing extremely well, and I think he is going to keep winning, because I was like, last week I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be able to win more weeks. Then he beats the Vespergrim Park Rangers, one of the teams I thought was going to be doing very well, and he's proven me wrong, breaking down the expectations, and I'm really happy about that. I think he's just doing well, and I want to see him continue to do well. So, moving on to number 5. Number 5, I have the Berkhamsted Bastiodons. They are also another team that moved up quite a bit. Again, it was another team I was worried about. I'm not too much of a fan of the team, as well as I'm worried about the consistency of how well he's going to be able to do. But he defeated the Detroit Pincers, which was at my number 1, and he used Hoopa Unbound finally. He didn't use the first 2 weeks. He used Hoopa Unbound, and it gets 3 kills. That thing is such a problem to deal with, even though it's middling speed at 80, horrible defense, but it doesn't matter. Base 170 special attack and 160 attack, how do you wall that thing? And the Detroit Pincers definitely had a problem with that, because if you look at the Detroit Pincers team, their team's slow. If you don't have really fast Pokemon, the only fast thing he has is Alakazam. And Hoopa Unbound actually has decent special defense. Like it's like base 130 special defense. I'm not too sure on the stats. So I saw the planning. He's like, I'm going to bring the Hoopa Unbound because the Detroit Pincers are going to have a very hard time dealing with it, because he's got a lot of bulky things, and they're all slow. Doesn't have really any fast offensive mons. One of his fastest is like Mamoswine, and that's base 80. So he used Hoopa Unbound to great effect. He also brought Mega Gallade. That's why I'm not like too big on Hoopa Unbound and Mega Gallade. I think it's going to be hard to bring them the same week. And he's bringing Heliolisk and Zapdos at the same time. And I'm kind of like, why bring both? They seem to fill similar roles, fast electric types. But he's been bringing them, and he's been doing fine with them. So you can't really hold it against him if he's able to bring his really offensive threats and use them well. He also brought the Feraligatr, so he's bringing all 3 of what I thought were his most scary Pokemon in the Feraligatr, the Mega Gallade, and Hoopa Unbound. He brings all 3 of them and is able to just tear a hole through the Detroit Pincers team. Right? It's very hard for, like, Slowbro, okay, can deal with the Mega Gallade and the Feraligatr, but not the Hoopa Unbound, and not the Zapdos, or the Heliolisk. The Chestnut can't... Chestnut's not staying in a Hoopa Unbound, Gunk Shot's a thing. Nor the Mega Gallade. They didn't stay on the Feraligatr. So it was very hard for him to deal with the offense on the Berkhamsted Bastiodons team. And that's one of the things that's the one thing I do really love about their team, is that offense is just... That's really scary offense. Dealing with really powerful wall breakers in Hoopa Unbound. Mega Gallade can be a very powerful wall breaker with Swords Dance. Same with Feraligatr. You got to deal with 3 of them. One of them is bad enough, but 3 of them, and he brought them all on the same team, and he got a 3-0 win. It was a very strong win. The planning was very good. The playing was very good. I have no complaints. That's why I moved them up to 5, and I think they're going to be able to do very good stuff in the future, especially if they participate also, like I say this for a lot of teams, if they participate in the free agency and trades and drops something, because I can see them dropping one of their NUs and picking up something higher. They have 60 points left over. You pick up something a little bit better. They dropped a Skuntank. You don't really need Skuntank. You already have Crobat and Zapdos for Defog. Something like that. He has the points to spare to pick up something better in like UU. And if he does that, his team is it's gonna be very hard to deal with. It's already hard enough to deal with defensively because he's got just such offense. And this is it's got the offense plus the hazard removal support, which it needs, plus good defense. Very hard team to deal with, and they definitely showed this week they're a threat, a huge threat. So they're at 5, and if they keep winning, I can see them moving up even more, especially if they show this. If they show the same planning and playing as they did this week, I can see them moving up. And they're doing pretty good. They're at 2-1, 2-1. That's a good record. It's just like the other team. It's a winning record, and I was worried about the consistency as well, how well he's going to do week to week, and I'm very impressed this week. So he's at my number 5. At number 4, so moving on to number 4, he's going to be very happy about this one. At number 4, I have the Iowa Focus Energy, and Nick is going to be very happy about this because he is above the Vespercon Park Rangers, and that is because he's winning. He's 2-1. This week, he played against the Atlanta Braviary, and he did very well. Again, like I said, when I was talking about the Atlanta Braviary, his playing I thought was very good in the beginning. He was just like left, right. He was using his revenge killers and he's using his mons very well. And there's no complaint about that in the beginning. Towards the end is where the play started getting a little bit sloppy. I know he missed something, and he was trying to play around the Tyranitar, and I don't think he did a great job at that towards the end, so I thought he could have gotten like a 3 or 4-0, but he only got a 2-0, but still it was definitely in his favor to win at that point, and he did win, so I obviously can't fault him for winning. It's not something I can do, and he knows how to use his team. It was a little shaky in the beginning, like last week. He did lose, and I think he was a little shaky last week on how to use his team, but this week he just came out real strong. Beat the Atlanta Braviary in a pretty strong showing, and if he continues to use his team this way, number 4 is a great spot to be in. It's in the top 6. It's the team, I think, that has a very good shot at making the playoffs at this point. Obviously, things can still change. He could all of a sudden go on an 8-lose streak. I don't think he is going to, because he's been able to use his team well and plan well and play well. If he can continue to do that, obviously, he's going to either stay where he is or move up, depending on how other teams do. But he's using his revenge killers to good effect. This week he brought the Talonflame, brought the Raikou, Azumarill. The Cobalion, he was actually using Cobalion very well. I like Cobalion, it's good. It worked well against the Atlanta Braviary's team, especially against things like the Tyranitar, because you can switch out on a crunch, get the justified boost, and then become a pretty big offensive threat, because its attack isn't great at 90, but after a justified boost, that thing is definitely very scary to deal with. He's using Raikou well, and his team is also hard to deal with offensively because he has a pretty good Volt Turn core. He's got Talonflame, he's got Raikou, he's got Rodemo, and Kobalion, and so he can use that very well, because when you have a lot of revenge goes, you're going to want a lot of switch initiative, and he has quite a bit of switch initiative on his team, and that's always a great thing to have, especially on a more offensive team like his, and he's been using it very well. I think he planned well against the Atlanta Braviary. He might have been a little bit higher if I saw better playing towards the end game, but it happens. Like, that's why I'm not docking him for it, but I'm also not really rewarding how he's playing towards the end, like moving him higher up. But he is at number 4. It's a very good place to be in, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in future weeks. I think he's going to be able to keep this up and make the playoffs. Granted, this is only week 3, so there's no guarantee, but I do like how he's been playing. I do like how he's been planning, and I'm looking forward to how he does. So, moving on to my number 3. My bad. Moving on to my number 3, I have the Washington Red Shells. They did not move at all. They were number 3 last week. They're number 3 this week. There's not really much to say. They played the Manhattan Manectrics, and his team is also another one of my favorite teams this season. Very hard to deal with defensively. He brought Mega Aggron and Blissey, and while fighting does do quite a bit of damage, he paired that up with Starmie, Victini, and Gliscor, all which resist fighting. And it's a hard defensive core to deal with, and none of them died. Mega Aggron, Gliscor, and Blissey, none of them died, because it's very hard, especially for a team like the Manhattan Manectrics, whose only fighting stab is in Hitmontop, which is not a very good offensive mon to begin with. So he had superpower on Tornadus Eye, and he would have been able to kill the Blissey with the superpower. But obviously, it's a move that's known to be on Tornadus Eye, and the Washington Red Shells played very well around it. Gliscor, because the only fighting moves the Manhattan Manectrics had was physical fighting moves, he was able to just easily use his Gliscor. Fully physically defensive is not going to take much damage from fighting moves. So, unfortunately for the Manhattan Manectrics, they did take a pretty big loss, but I think they're getting used to playing with their team. And now I see the Washington Red Shells, they had a loss week 1, but these past 2 weeks, I think they've just been showing that I think he's now getting used to his team. There's some always trial period when after you've drafted, in which you get used to using it. And I think he's starting to get really comfortable with his team. I don't really see much that he really needs to drop in free agency to make his team any scarier. I know he plans on dropping something. I think it was actually the Greninja. I think he was planning on dropping because for some reason he doesn't like it. I don't understand. But he hasn't brought it at all in the past 3 weeks. I do not think he's brought it at all. And looking at his battles, no, he's not. He hasn't brought the Greninja at all. And I think that's I think he just doesn't like it. It's a very good offensive mon, and even though it can't use the Aurus move tutor moves, it's still very good. I'm a little worried about what he's going to pick up instead of the Greninja, but anything he picks up is going to be better than Greninja if he's not going to use the Greninja anyway. So it can only help out his team because he doesn't use it. Whatever he picks up should be interesting to see. But his playing, I have no problems with. Mega Aggron, Gliscor, and Blissey are just really hard to take down. I'm not moving him up. I'm not moving him down. He did play against the newest team in the league, whose team is kind of shaky on how they're going to be able to play with that team. Manhattan Manectrics not playing too well this week. Washington Red Shells just able to kind of breeze through this match. It was a little bit longer because his team is much more defensive this week, and I think that's his play style. He plays a little bit more defensively with some really strong offense thrown in there, just like with Victini and even Starmie. And you can tell it was decently, not easy, but he didn't really have to worry about his walls too much this week. Blissey got 2 kills. When a very passive wall like Blissey gets 2 kills, you know there's a problem with the other teams playing. And this week it definitely showed, where the Washington Red Shells were able to just kind of, they got the biggest win this week. And I think their team's very scary, both offensively and defensively, and I can just see them being probably one of the most consistent teams throughout this entire season. So, no complaints here on their playing, no complaints here on their planning, and I'm also looking forward to how well he does next week and future weeks. So, the number 2, I have the Detroit Pincers. So, Detroit Pincers were number 1 last week. They did lose this week to the Berkhamsted Bastiodons. I think the reason I didn't move him down more for a loss this week, I think the Berkhamsted Bastiodons had such a much better matchup against the Detroit Pincers, just because Detroit Pincers one of the slowest teams. Berkhamsted Bastiodons have some of the strongest offense and wall breakers, so when you have a slow team against a team with like Hoopa Unbound, you're going to have a bad time, and he had a bad time this week. It wasn't a terrible loss, it was only 3-0, but I think he planned pretty well. I just saw this week as a problem with the fact that his team doesn't have enough speed on it. And it definitely shows when your team doesn't have a lot of speed, and you're playing against a team that has a very strong offense, it's going to be hard to plan well. And I think he planned well, it's just when it came to playing, the Hoopa Unbound just kind of ripped straight through his team. It got 3 kills. The Detroit Pincers eventually killed the Hoopa Unbound, but not before it got 3 kills, which is huge. When Mon gets 3 kills like that, your team's not looking too good. So, he's number 2. I see him still being one of the most consistent. This just, to me, this week he had a very bad matchup, and it showed. The way to remedy this is obviously he needs to drop one of his slower mons, and he needs to pick up something faster. Something in possibly, I think, in like UU that is faster. It's got some strong offense to it. Things like Mienshao is fast. Even the Haxorus, it's not the fastest, but it's fast enough. Things like that where they're fast, they're strong. He needs something like that, or he's going to have problems with other very fast offensive teams, like the Middle-earth Magmortars, like if he plays the Vespiquen Park Rangers and they bring Sandrush Excadrill, that's going to be very hard for them to deal with. They do have Chestnut. They have defensive walls, but physically defensive walls, good ones, but for those very offensive teams, it's going to be hard for him to plan very well and play play to the point where you think he should win, because you look at the team matchup, it's just like, oh boy, that's a very fast offensive team. He has a slower offensive team, and when you have a fast offensive team versus a slow offensive team, usually the fast offensive team has the upper hand, and it really showed this week. So he's still at my number 2, and I think he's going to do very well in the next coming weeks. I don't know how well he's going to do, but at this point, he's still 2-1. He has a very good record. He's still up there in terms of, I think he's still number 1 in his division, and I just see him being very strong contender for the playoffs, and I'm keeping him at number 2, or I'm dropping him down to number 2, which is still an amazing place to be in, and I hope he stays as consistently as he's been playing and planning. So I think he's going to do well, and so he's going to be at my number 2, and I'm looking forward to how well he does. And so if you have not narrowed it down, my number 1 is the Toronto Tyrantrums. They're 3-0. They won all 3 weeks. They're in a very good spot right now. 3-0 is very good to be in. Like you can't be in any better spot right now. You can only have 3 wins. They have all 3 wins. They played against the team that I thought was going to be a huge threat, which was the Chelsea Shandies. And there's not much to really say about it. He's all 3 weeks. His planning's been almost impeccable. I mean, he didn't even bring his mega this week. He didn't need to. The Chelsea Shandies didn't have much for the defense that was Umbreon, Ferrothorn, and Blastoise, and he was just Umbreon getting 2 kills. That's very good, especially considering how passive Umbreon is. Aside from foul play, it's usually very passive wall, and when a passive wall gets kills, there's a problem. Not for the Toronto Tyrantrons, but for the Chelsea Shandies. I don't think they played as well around it as they should have. You look at their team, they don't have any fighting staff to take care of the Umbreon. And Umbreon is just one of those things that is such a problem to deal with just because of how bulky it is. 95, 110, 130, I think it is. It's just a problem. And he's been using his team to great effect. He obviously has to be 3-0. He's very used to how his team works. And he's just got really big offensive threats. I mean, Heracross, Landorus, Therian, very good physical offensive threats. And the Reuniclus, I think it was an underrated threat until it was used effectively by PokeAim in UCL. People realized Reuniclus is actually a threat. And I think he's been able to use... He drafted a team... Well, I looked at it and I said, I don't know how well it's going to do. He drafted a team in which he's used to the Pokemon he's using, and you could definitely see it this week where he's able to take down threats like Keldeo, Mega Charizard, Thundurus. It's really huge offensive threat, Tyrantrum, and it wasn't a problem for him this week. I think he's just going to be a very consistent battler each week. He's number 1. He has the best record. He's number 1 in the league. And I wouldn't be surprised if he stays there, just based on these past 3 weeks of how he's been playing and planning. So that is going to wrap up the Week 3 power rankings for Season 1 of PICA. If you have your own power rankings, please leave them in the comment section below. Call me an idiot, say, this team should be at number 1. I don't really give a shit. You say what you want. I'm not going to mind too much. But next week, Xavier will be back. It's just this week was kind of crazy in terms of scheduling for both of us. I'm really busy. I started work, and he's been busy. He has school. Our times haven't lined up that well this week, so just me. And next week, it will be back to normal. It will be both of us. But that's all I got for today. My name is Burke. I'll see y'all next time.